What's going on, everybody? We're going to have a really cool show today talking about from event leads to sales, right? I think at the end of the day, this is something that is call like a pivotal topic. A lot of people struggle with it. A lot of companies put all this time, energy, effort into an event, into a trade show, into an activation. And then once that event, they get there, all the hoopla for the 2, 3, 4 days, and then it just kind of dies off, right? So I got Zach Barney with me here today. He is the CEO and co-founder of Mobley, and we were connected through a mutual friend and kind of had a really interesting conversation about this whole concept of speed to lead and events, and then, kind of turning your leads into sales, getting better at the follow-up process. Had a conversation and then decided to do a show. Zach, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super happy to be here and just to chat. Yeah.
Nice, man. Give everybody just quick little elevator pitch, who you are, Mobley, what you do.
Cool. So I'm going to go off the chat and say my favorite color is orange.
Nice.
And I'm based in Lehi, Utah, which is the heart of all tech in the region. And I started Mobley just a couple of years ago. My background is in building and leading sales teams. Been doing that for about 15 years, everything from bootstrap startups to post IPO companies. And then I spent 3 years in private equity as a drop-in sales fixer for the companies that we acquired, and noticed as I kept moving up in my career that it's really, really easy if you have the right tools to track attribution and conversion metrics and all of the things that the C-suite cares about through pretty much every lead channel except for events. And I was really struggling with that because on one hand, I was going to a lot of events and seeing how great they were. And on the other hand, would have our CMO coming back and, after the fact saying, oh, it was just a branding play. We had to be there for our customers because they couldn't quantify any of the actual results. And that didn't really sit right with me. It's not the CMO's fault. We just haven't provisioned event marketers with the right tools like we have every other aspect of go-to-market. So I decided to do something about it.
It's awesome, man. When you and I first spoke, I kind of asked you like, what matters to you most when it comes
Yeah.
to like trade shows, events, and you gave a really interesting answer. You said speed to lead, which really caught my attention. So let's start there and talk a little bit about why that's important to you, exactly what it means, and why it's important to event marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. So question for you, Matt. Do you know
Yeah.
how long the average human attention span is?
How long is the average human attention span?
For
Um,
reference, a goldfish is 9 seconds.
yeah, I mean, so we got to be more, right? I'd say let's say 15 seconds.
8.25 seconds.
Wow.
It's gone down 4 seconds over the past 10 years with social media, especially TikTok,
Not a good
making
look for the human
it
race at all.
not a good look at all. We literally have less attention than goldfish. I had a coworker of mine who was managing our marketing at a previous company that told me that it's best practice to wait a week to follow up with leads because people are busy, they're traveling, they need time to rest and decompress after a busy event. And my gut told me that was wrong. Like, there's no way people remember me, especially if they're being scanned by 50 other vendors at the same event. But I don't believe that gut feelings are the way you should make business decisions. So I went out and did some research, found that the average company takes 11 days to follow up with leads for the first time after an event. And that the companies that are significantly faster than that have a significantly higher conversion rate. You want to maintain your buyer's attention, and the way you do that is by not letting them forget about you in the first place.
Yeah. I think that some of those things you said, they're really interesting. About the waiting to get to people after an event. 11 days feels like such a long time, right? And, I kind of reference when we kicked off. I mean, I've been to a lot of
Yeah.
events. I've even like felt being an attendee in an event, like the energy of being there for 2, 3 days. And you're going through, from one to the next, to the next, to the next, and you're meeting all these people. And it's kind of like a
Yep.
whirlwind, in all honesty, right?
Yep.
But when you leave, it kind of like you shut off. Like, people are there, they're present, they're in the moment. And then when they leave, they're gone. They're going home, they're going back to their families and getting back to whatever it is that they put off for 3 days, which to
Absolutely.
me makes that follow up. I always talk about like personalized follow-up in the moment, right? Like I love on the trade show floor. I recommend this to all our clients. When you get done meeting somebody, either within the next 30 minutes or by that evening, send them a text, send them an email. Hey, great talking to you. Enjoyed talking about A, B, and C. And, I'm going to be the person that you would be in touch with. I'll get back to you. Or, hey, this is Jill from marketing. She's going to reach out to you, and just getting that touch point instantly right away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
Talk to me a little bit about attribution, right? Like I know attribution in marketing in general is a tricky topic. It's changing a little bit. Everybody wants to fight for credit. I've kind of started to view events, and I think I told you this, as like a catalyst for pipeline, right? And it could just be a touch point and just the kick in the ass that it needs, right?
Yep.
Whether it's a current customer, old customer, a deal being accelerated, just the event can be the push, Talk to me a little bit about when it comes speed to lead, when it comes to utilizing softwares and technology at events, how that maybe helps with attribution and helps events sort of make a case for themselves.
Absolutely. So you struck a nerve with one comment in a very good way. I hate that departments have to fight for credit.
Yeah.
That's not the right way to run a business, and shame on CEOs and boards that do that and set targets around you need X number of leads in order to be successful. And that's how we measure marketing success. Like what we should be measuring an entire go-to-market team on is actual revenue. Mm-hmm. And use KPIs like lead volume and pipeline volume as leading indicators, but not the end all be all to determining whether or not the event was a success. So it's really important that you have clear attribution so that you can know what is influencing people in their buying decision. And it's not like it's just that last interaction with somebody that causes them to buy or not buy. So I also think it's definitely not binary. Like it's not they either came for an event or something else. Typically they came through an event and were influenced by 8 other things and then eventually bought. And all of those channels need to be given some credit for that because it's a team sport that we're doing here. So in terms of speed to lead, one thing, in fact, we were just running an analysis for our own event strategy for next year. And we found that just pulling a report from Salesforce on our event effectivity for this past year, we were significantly worse in the first couple of months of the year than we were on the past 6-8 months as we built our own product to get better and more automated. But we were looking at a couple of previous events that we had done, and our head of rep ops is like, hey, this event we probably shouldn't do anymore because it only yielded $10,000 of revenue.
Yeah.
And I immediately was like, no, I know that this deal came from it. This deal came from it. And then we had this huge deal in the pipeline that is from it as well. But they weren't attributed properly because of the way the CRM is, initially architected, just doesn't give that proper attribution. But if you have speed to lead, it's a lot easier to tag things properly while you still remember where they're coming from. And if you automate that process and systematize it to where it's not reliant upon human error, then it makes things just a whole lot cleaner. Just 2 key stats from the research that we did in determining if we were going to build this or not. Number one, 98% of event marketers feel like they're crushing it. This is slightly better than anecdotal. We interviewed 100 event marketers, and that's the data that we got. And then we also interviewed 100 C-suite executives and found that only 6% of them feel like their event strategy is working. So there's this huge disconnect, largely due to a lack of proper attribution. I would say that the true number is probably right there in the middle. Like event marketers are unsung heroes of revenue organizations, but if they can't prove it, then their job is constantly being questioned. It's constantly on the line in the board meetings because they can't tie it to revenue without that clear attribution.
Yeah, that's an interesting stat, right? From a small sample size of, 98% of event marketers feel like they're doing a great job. I feel like some of that probably gets lost in the planning and the coordination and in the execution of events, which to me is just one side of it. Whereas the other side is the approach and the strategy, which I think the approach and the strategy is really where you get into sort of being able to deliver metrics and goals and numbers and figures, I would say, that tell the story, right? And
Yep.
then the 6% on the C-suite doesn't really surprise me. It feels like there's a big disconnect, right? From C-suite down to events in terms of why we do them. I have a lot of companies where I've had event marketers go to C-suite and tell that they want to pull out of an event. CEO won't let them. CEO wants to be
Hmm.
there. So the CEO is not interested in the strategy. The CEO is not interested in the conversations that are having, but the CEO wants to make sure that he or she get to speak at the event, that they are there because they've always been there. So I think some of the, I guess, like conundrums of events, which is we go because we always go, is spread out between event managers just doing their job and getting caught, I call the hamster wheel, but also C-suite and directors and executives not thinking outside the box, or what I really would like to say is not treating their events like a sales and marketing channel and treating it like a cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, why do you think people struggle with speed to lead? It seems like such an obvious thing, right? It seems like, okay, you go to an event, you have a great conversation, they come to a dinner, you engage them in your booth with either a talk, with a podcast, with a cool raffle, with a game, with a product demonstration, whatever it may be, and you have this excellent conversation.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it just be instinctual to follow up with that person immediately rather than waiting, you said 11 days?
Yeah, I don't think it's companies that are sitting on their laurels just waiting because they
Mm-hmm.
feel like waiting. Like oftentimes that's their excuse to why it's taking so long. I think the real issue is when you go to an event, you're typically provided with a third-party lead retrieval app that sometimes you have to pay a lot of money for, sometimes it's included. And the customer of that technology is the event themselves, not you as the exhibitor. So if I go to exhibit at an event and they've contracted with Cvent, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Cvent's a great tool for that event. But since you are not Cvent's customer, they don't have much of an incentive to build CRM integrations, clean data enrichment, anything like that for all 100 exhibitors at that event.
Okay.
So what typically happens is at the end of the event, you export a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet has whatever registration people put in when they signed up for the event in the first place. So there's a whole bunch of Matt's burner account 19s at hotmail.com.
Yeah.
And you
All the
have
good ones.
all the good ones. You've got people that are registering 6 people on their team
Yeah.
with the same email address for efficiency's sake, whatever. And the event chooses how much data they want to give to exhibitors in the first place. And that's a huge problem because then you have to go and pay a third party to enrich that data, map the fields properly to your CRM or marketing automation platform, import it, deduplicate it, go through assignment rules, and finally get it assigned out to a rep in time for them to make their first call. Accounting for weekends and stuff, it just takes time. It's manual.
Yeah.
And nobody's been thinking about the exhibitors as the customer versus the event host as the customer.
Smart. That makes sense. Give me an example of like process. If you were creating process for speed
Yeah.
to lead for a company, right? I'm a company, whether I'm a manufacturer, SaaS company, whatever, let's say a fintech. We were talking that you work
Yeah.
in fintech a little bit, right? So let's
Yeah.
say I'm a fintech company. I'm going to go to 4 trade shows a year, right? Various sizes, maybe 10 by 20, 20 by 30, a 40 by 40, a marquee
Yeah.
show. And you're consulting them. Talk to me a little bit about how you would build that follow-up and that speed to lead process for them.
Well, since you walked right into it, I guess I get to give a little bit of a shameless plug on what Mobley does.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a universal lead retrieval app that integrates with users' CRMs and marketing automation platforms so that you can take it anywhere, even if the event doesn't have
Yeah.
a badge system. So what I would tell them to do is number one, identify the types of like the different categories of attendees that they will be speaking with. Are they all prospective customers? Or some going to be current customers, partners, investors, whatever? But identify those segments and then identify how you want to sort people within those segments. At Mobley, we do a simple hot, medium, cold tag within our app. So if we go to, let's just talk about Experiential Marketing Summit in Vegas. We were chatting about that
Yeah.
a little bit earlier. Almost everybody there is either a partner, a current customer, or a potential customer of ours. There's going to be plenty of people that are just trick-or-treaters looking for a free t-shirt or whatever. I don't want to spend my sales team's effort
Yeah.
on those people, right? I don't want them to be wasting their time if this person isn't our key buyer persona and they clearly were just nodding their head so that I would give them a shirt. So we have our integration with our CRM and marketing automation set up to where if it's tagged as a cold lead, then they push to our CRM and automatically go to a HubSpot drip. So they still get followed up with quickly, literally within 3 or 4 minutes of shaking their hand, but there's no manual work. If they are tagged as a hot lead, then they will get a different automated drip email that's a little bit more call to action-y, but they will also be put into a Gong Engage flow. So Gong Engage is our sales engagement platform. You could use Outreach, SalesLoft, whatever. But when a lead matches that event and is tagged as a hot lead and a prospect, for example, they go to a very, very specific campaign. So they're getting the automated email immediately that appears more personalized. And then the rep is getting a task to text them, thanks for meeting, come to our happy hour, whatever we're doing for that specific event. And they do that immediately. So I would recommend sorting and building an integration with your CRM and marketing automation platform so that that happens automatically with every lead. There is no business card collecting and then gathering dust on your desk. There is no taking notes in your notes app and then forgetting about it. Nothing like that. You're just using the same unified system at all of those events and not wasting time training people on a new process.
So a few things I like about what you just said. One was I love having to force a choice when you're talking to somebody, right? Well, hot,
Yeah.
medium, cold, whatever. You're forcing a choice and then you know what that outcome is. So you have to be deliberate about how you make that choice for that individual. One question I would ask in that process, how can you personalize things, right? If you're getting that immediate sort of drip, that immediate
Yep.
email or a certain chain reaction of a path that this would then go on, how can you personalize that? Because I think that the personalization is important.
Yeah. So a couple of things that we do. So number one, if it's a hot lead, the follow-up task for the rep is not automated. They get the quick automated email to have a quick follow-up, but then the task is for the rep to send something more personalized. That's number one. And then number two, you can build as many tags as you want within our app. So a couple things that we ask because of who we are. We ask what current CRM they use. We ask what their marketing automation is. We ask how many events they do and what their buying timeline is. And then we have a free text description field. So all of those fields can be used to not only sort the leads within your system, but also form your follow-up messaging for them.
I like the qualification questions. I think I told you earlier, I wrote a post recently on LinkedIn about follow-up. And one of my elements in there was having really good qualification questions on the floor. Cause I think that helps kind of like predicate the outcome that's going to happen with those leads in there.
We don't have as good of memories as we think we do either. If you're at a busy show talking to hundreds of people, good luck.
I'm an advocate of scripting everything on the show floor. So whether it's the narrative, the story that you're telling, the engagements, the raffles, whatever it may be, you're trying to get people into meetings, write a little script for how you're going to do it after. Write a script for how you qualify. People need to be reminded when they're in the moment of those things. And I think really good event marketers can work with sales and work with their stakeholders to get all that information dialed in, then give it to everybody and hold everybody accountable to saying like, hey, I'm making this ABC for you, right? Like I'm making this so easy. Just, I need you to just do it. Right. I'm handing it over. You had mentioned categories when we were running through the process, what you would do, creating categories of attendees. I think this is a really important one that you touched on. And it's something that when I talk about pipeline impact, right? Events being a catalyst to create pipeline impact, I find that the more people that we talk to, they miss this step and they don't even really understand always where the pipeline impact will come from. People are like, oh, leads. I need leads. It's like, okay, well, is that a current customer that you're going to get to spend more? Is that somebody that's already in your deal timeline that you're going to accelerate the deal? Is it someone that you
Yep.
work with, but they don't spend shit because they're frustrated with you, but then you have a great conversation and then they start spending a lot with you? Is it a deal that you've never been with before? Is it a partnership? Is it new? Like identifying those different types, I also think that then allows you to set up your strategy when you know, like I use this example all the time. I was on a call with a director of sales and a director of marketing at a company talking about their trade show booth. And
Yep.
I ended up asking them, I forget the question, but in and around about the engagement in the booth. What's it like? Who are you talking to? What's the experience? And then something had triggered me through what they were saying. I said, wait a minute. I said, are you talking to more of your current customers or are you talking to new? And I mean, on cue, the director of sales was like, new business. And the director of marketing was like, oh, we talked to a ton of customers. And I was like, time out. And I said,
Yeah.
which is it? And then they both started laughing. And then over the next 20 minutes, we deciphered that pretty much they had been strategizing for new business this entire time and completely missing the boat that they're getting 40
Yeah.
customers, like good customers, come to their booth, come see them, that they now have a chance to upsell, strengthen their relationship, increase average customer sale. So there's so much that goes into, you're talking about follow-up here and the importance of categorizing it, but I think it goes into everything that event marketers do.
Totally agree. I think it's important to know what your strategy is. And if it is a truly like a net new focused approach,
Yeah.
you're just trying to get your name out there and get as many leads as possible, then don't send account managers, don't send enterprise account executives and your director of business development.
Yeah.
Send SDRs and send founders and full cycle A's, people whose livelihood depends on having a high volume of conversations that and having things actually logged and
Yeah.
attributed properly to them. If you're trying to work your current pipeline and strengthen strategic relationships, then hell yeah, bring in your biz dev people, bring in your
Yeah.
field reps with a couple of named accounts, but you definitely should know that, because if you're not aligned on that, you could send the completely wrong people and not get the results that you're going for.
I like how you mentioned the kind of thought process of who you bring to your trade show and who you bring to your events, because it's
Yeah.
not always just fly in your sales team. It's not always just bring in your biz dev people. Like I
Yep.
think, especially at your marquee shows, the ones where you are outlaying a lot of capital and you do feel like your ICPs are there and you're having those conversations, I think you should be really cautious about who you bring. I think you should hand select almost to a degree. Maybe it's a person from marketing that's just really like gregarious and they're just a really good communicator. They're friendly. They're good on the floor, right? It really matters. Your founder. How good is your founder on the floor? Like you mentioned, it doesn't just need to be a group of salespeople. All right, let's take a question here. We got a question from Allison. Hi, Allison. Good to see you. Glad to have you here. Allison says, I work for a company that's phenomenal at creating relationships, but is very new to the concept of tracking. Is there a easy entry level system you'd recommend? And something that makes it
Yeah.
incredibly easy for sales. As of now, we don't have a CRM to integrate with any software.
I would say get a CRM.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Get a CRM. That's the system that'll track things properly. And if you don't have anything right now, my very strong recommendation would be to get HubSpot. You can use that for
Yeah.
marketing automation. You can use it for CRM. It's incredibly inexpensive when you compare it to Salesforce, which is my favorite CRM, but it requires a lot of work and a lot of change management. If you don't have anything right now at all, then it might be a little bit hard. But I would recommend starting there. If you're a young startup, there are a lot of programs out there that'll get you HubSpot for 90% off for the first year and 50% off for the second year. Happy to point you in the direction of a bunch of people that can get you that discount.
Yeah, I think in order, depending on size of company, I would say the one variable in there is that if you are a smaller company, it is way easier to track and track quickly without having all the tech and all the tools. You can do it, right? Like Allison, I don't know if you remember at EMC when we were at our event, Sandy, who was there. Sandy used to work for a huge company, now works for a very small company. But like she is so in tune with her sales team, they don't need anything fancy. They're operating on like a Google spreadsheet that they're all sharing. They're in it all day. They're sharing notes. They're adding personalization. The marketing team is on that sheet. They can engage an email campaign and send this out. So it depends. The smaller the company, I think the easier it is, and you should have your kind of like shit together, right? Because it's literally just sheer willpower. The bigger the organization, the more spread out the organization, the more complex in the sales cycle. I think you have no choice but to have some form of CRM, and you have no choice but to have some form of lead capturing tool that connects and allows you to do some of the things that Zach is talking about here, for sure.
Yep.
Great question. Thanks for popping that in there. Zach, let's talk about Event Marketer University. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So small correction, Event Marketing University. We started it a little bit selfishly. You could imagine being an event tech platform that events are a big source of revenue for us.
Yeah.
And there is some seasonality to marketing events. Fall is really big, spring is really big, summer is a little bit dead.
Yeah.
So we were just moving into our new office here and taking on that expense. And we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we kind of did a welcoming party to our friends and potential customers, investors, and so forth, and just riffed on it for a while and ultimately came to the conclusion that we want it to not just be like lunch. We want it to be something valuable for people. And why don't we make it an educational event and bring in some of the best thought leaders around event marketing to teach courses, to have little breakout rooms. I did a keynote session. We did a customer panel and had lunch and just made it a fun educational afternoon for really good networking and a way for event marketers specifically, but really anybody in go-to-market to just learn from people that have been there, done that. It went so well for us that we decided this coming year, we're going to roll out a roadshow and probably do 5 or 6 cities similarly, find the top thought leaders in each of those markets to help put together a killer 3-4 hour event with some good food and networking and just teach actual educational courses, not marketing your company or anything like that, like actually just strategize with people and share best practices.
What are some takeaways? I mean, what are some things that you all were talking about at Event Marketing University?
Number one, I think there are plenty of ways to get creative on a tight budget.
Yeah.
You don't have to be getting a big booth for every one of your shows. I think it's important to do that, especially a lot of your key events. But you can have a pretty awesome event strategy and be super scrappy by leaning into sidecar events, show walking, and hosting your own things as well. And I think showing that you're a human and not relying upon what you've always done. Print out some pamphlets, stand at the booth, make sure everybody is dressed uniformly, do demos. Like there comes a time where you're just not standing out from the crowd, no matter how killer your product is, because you're just boring people. So we had Ryan O'Hara, he's the CEO of Pitchfire, come out and share some unique creativity stories, including one time where their booth didn't arrive. They had 2 events going on simultaneously, and their team accidentally sent both booths to the same event, and the other event was across the country. So they got scrappy and creative and turned it into an arm wrestling competition and put up a big bracket, and it ended up being their most successful event of the year. Yeah, it was awesome.
Amazing. I'll bet it killed.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I mean, think about the opportunity to take pictures with everybody, send follow-up brackets, get people coming back to the booth to see how people were doing. It was unreal. And just little creative things like that to stand out when you're on a budget, I think was super helpful. The other learning I took was how hungry the event marketing industry is for connection and thought leadership. We put this thing together on a whim. We had 100 people sign up. We expected maybe 50 to show up, and we had 120 show up. So it was really cool. We definitely broke a whole bunch of fire marshal regulations. Our office isn't massive, and it was amazing.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny when you were talking about going through that. One of my favorite quotes from Christopher Lockheed just came to mind, which is that better draws a comparison, right? And different forces a choice.
Yep.
And
Different is better than better is the
yeah,
way I've heard that framed before.
and I love that concept. And it's not for everything, but I think when it comes to events and it comes to being on a trade show floor and it comes to being in a bit of a marketplace, which is what an event can be at times, I
Yep.
think you have to be different. I think you have to take
Yep.
chances to be different. You're fighting you're fighting to tell your story in a room full of other people trying to tell their story. So in a way, you do have to garner attention. You do have to be different. And just like you said, just doing the run of the mill thing that everybody else does, how are you really expecting results like
Yeah.
that? You
Yeah.
have to do
Can I
stuff
share
different.
a story?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So about 10 years ago, it was literally my first business trip ever.
Sure.
I was an account executive at an HR tech company called HireVue. If you
Yep.
haven't heard of HireVue, they pioneered digital interviewing. Really cool, innovative company. And I was in charge of the Midwest territory and found a local HR conference in Sandusky, Ohio. So I took my SDR. We had a little booth in the box program where we just had a ready-made booth to go, went to the event, and we just brought a bunch of swag. So HireVue, given that they're digital interviewing, one of the big marketing campaigns that we put together was interview in your PJs. And we would give out these bright red bunny slippers as swag. So the SDR and I, we decided that we were going to wear like our HireVue polos, but we were going to wear HireVue hats backwards and bunny slippers as well to be a little bit more inviting and casual. So there's a PEO provider right next to us. They all showed up in suits and just had a bunch of
Yeah.
busy wording on their booth and
Yep.
flyers.
Very busy.
And I was chatting with one of their guys and we became pretty good buddies. But then I overheard somebody else venting to him about how unprofessional we were. And he's like, dude, have you not noticed that they have 3 times the booth traffic as us?
Yeah.
We have a bigger booth. We're right next to them, yet they're 3 times as busy. Don't you think maybe it's because they're drawing attention and maybe we should think about that instead of trying to be, CPAs?
Yeah.
That stuck with me. Again, it was my first show that I had ever done.
Yeah.
I had been primarily remote, and doing that just validated the thought process of standing out and not being afraid to be a little bit different.
Yeah, I think it's a good story and it's a good lesson. Like one of the things that we work on, I don't want to tell people just to, drive the clown car out there just to drive the clown car out there, right? I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that if you put a little bit of thought into it, if you can help connect the dots for your customer, if you can say, hey, let's go tell our story, let's go be different, let's create a concept, let's create a theme, let's create something that helps us communicate, right? Stories help you communicate. And that's really what I think it's all about. And that, leads itself into being different. And that leads itself into kind of, standing out, I would say.
Yeah.
We got a question from Farah. I want to make sure we take it here. She said, what integrations do you support, like specifically with tools other than HubSpot? And then do you currently integrate with Stova?
Yeah. With Mobily, we integrate with any CRM or marketing automation platform out there. So HubSpot's a great one, but Salesforce, Zoho, Pipedrive, Dynamics, Eloqua,
Oh, you know what?
Marketo.
Farah just said, disregard my previous question. Thanks. She goes, if I may, sorry, Farah, I didn't see that. If I may ask, what makes Mobily different and better than other universal lead capture solutions? It's a great question.
Yeah, happy to chat about that. And sorry that we're going down the rabbit hole of a sales pitch. I'm not trying to do that, but happy to answer the question. So there are a handful of so-called universal lead capture apps out there. The difference between the way we've architected Mobily is we don't rely on the events API to get you access to registration data. So I definitely won't name names. There's some really good companies out there, but they require a tie-in to that event's system of record to access registration data, which typically costs you money. And it only works if there is an API to tie into, which is only roughly about 50% of events. So I liken it to the Sex Panther clone from Anchorman. 60% of the time it works every time. Whereas with Mobily, we don't touch APIs. We're completely independent of that. We use a technology called optical character recognition to read the image from a badge, similar to like a mobile check deposit. So here's a badge right here from one of my sales reps. Ignore that QR code. It takes a picture of Kevin Harris Mobley, converts it to text, and then Mobley is the data provider. We've got 21 different data sources plus a team of live human beings that are validating accuracy, recent job changes, and so forth. And what that tends to do is it yields a much higher connectivity rate and a systematized format of data, not relying on the event to tell you what registration information they are or are not going to give you.
Zach, we got another question from Becca. Hey, Becca, I work for a large corporation. Do you have any suggestions around getting everyone on board with a change in speed to lead? We have tried in the past and thought everyone was trained and aligned, but it didn't take off. Great question, Becca. Really good question.
Yep, that's a big one. So data talks, right? If you can show the data around conversion rates, and maybe you have a handful of events where some of them you had a faster speed to lead and had a higher conversion rate, that's number one. And then number two, you have to make the process easy for them. Like, it's not a sales rep's job to do busy work. And if they can't do something easy, then they're just not going to do it because they're just trying to close a deal. They let other people figure out the attribution. That's not their concern. And it's not their fault for not thinking about that. They were hired to be revenue producers. So that's what they want to do. And anything else is simply a distraction for them. Just an example that's not event related, but just to get you into the mindset of a sales rep. At my previous company, my top rep did 192% of his number the last year I was there. Fantastic rep. Unfortunately, Salesforce showed me a 90% win rate, which I know is complete and utter baloney. There is no way that a sales rep is winning 90% of their deals. What was happening is he wasn't putting anything in until they were asking for a contract. And every time I would ask him to have better data hygiene, I'd be like, Scott, man, I need you to put stuff in Salesforce. He'd say, Zach, I know I want to do that, but I have another demo in 5 minutes. Do you want me to demo that and win another deal? Or do you want me to spend 15 minutes updating the CRM? Of course, I said, go win the deal. You're doing almost 200% of your number. Like, all of the technology out there that makes it really easy for SDRs to do their jobs, sales engagement platforms, autolog emails, calls, and so forth. And for digital marketing, HubSpot and Marketo, they track attribution and score leads. Field stuff doesn't have that. Like, sales and marketing tech is not orchestrated to be really easily accessible on your cell phone. Any mobile app for HubSpot even or Salesforce is just a smaller screen version of their giant behemoth of a desktop platform. So it makes it harder, not easier, for them to do their job. So you have to find ways to make it easier for them and show them what's in it for them, how this is going to lead to more revenue, as opposed to how this makes your job easier, better attribution. You might as well be speaking French to them.
I think that's a great answer. And Becca, one of my thoughts just initially when you said it is, what matters to sales? Like, I think a lot of times when you're working cross department, right, you have to ask yourself what matters to them. I'll give you a good example. Kat Leong from Gainsight, she came on and we talked about her host event. She throws a huge host event, right? And her and I were talking about getting sales aligned with what she's trying to accomplish with this massive event. And one of the things she said was that at some point in time, the only way that she was able to get sales buy-in to getting people registered and getting ICPs invited and there and setting meetings ahead of time and then really proper follow-up the way that she wanted it done was to give them data that tells them the story that they want to hear. Right. So she didn't make up data, but essentially she dug through and found what she needed, which is essentially that somebody that attends their event. I hope I don't mess up the percentages, but essentially it was a 20% increase in average customer spend. And then it was a 40% deal acceleration if they were already in pipeline in terms of closing. So that's pretty powerful to be able to go to a salesperson and say, hey, by the way, like, I know you don't want to invite people. And I know all salespeople are the busiest people on the planet, right? They're the busiest people. They don't have time for anything. So, but hey, by the way, if you can get some really quality candidates here and you can follow up quickly, personalized, on top of it, get the information in CRM and do all the things that we need. By the way, these customers are spending 20% more. And also new opportunities or people that are in the pipeline are closing at 40% faster. So I would say you got to find what the sales really want and value. And then you have to find a way to tell them a story at the events, how this helps them get that.
Yeah, I would end with I have an incredibly high amount of empathy for this problem. There's a reason why I label myself a recovering VP of sales. It's an ongoing nightmare. Sales reps, they're the best, but they're also the worst. And it's an ongoing battle. Data talks.
Yeah. And typically the best salespeople can be the most challenging to work with. But
Mm-hmm.
but to a degree, it's why they're so good. It's why they close deals. They're monsters sometimes. They're just, I mean,
Yep.
it is. It's tough. I think part of your job or anyone's job is to figure out lay of the land, which is how to work with everybody around you. You'll work differently with a salesperson than you would work with somebody in your engineering department or your marketing department that you're looking to get a piece of material from or some content created for. So it's just kind of changing up your approach. And then I do think just on that question, like coming up with something, as Zach is saying, like some sort of lead retrieval system. I love the 3 steps he went through. One is categorizing your attendees, right? 2 is sorting those categories in terms of those individuals and people. And then also is being able to label them hot, medium, cold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D. Doesn't matter. Just come up with
Yep.
something so people know what the signals are. You know, what's funny is as I'm going through some of these notes here, and then I'm thinking about the things that people are asking, is the speed to lead thing, as much as it's a tech thing, and there are tools that can solve it. You have a background in sales, and I know, you do this Event Marketing University. We host a yearly event, EMC. One of the things that was brought up numerous times is follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
It is the idea of running these events, drawing in these leads, building these relationships, having these conversations, but then getting sales to do their part. I'll throw this at you. One interesting thing I heard from somebody there at a very large organization, and from an attribution standpoint, they work on a point system. So essentially, they apply points to accounts based on the touch point that they've had
Mm-hmm.
with them.
Yeah.
So it's not eliminating attribution, but it's basically saying once this account reaches 20 points and events is 5 of those points, right? It basically is like, oh, you've done your part, right? You've kicked
Yeah.
it. You've done what's needed to be done for that, that account. That's your attribution per se. Where do you feel some of the changes can be made in sales, marketing, events, and kind of like hovering around, I would call it like closing the loop on events?
Couple of things there. So going back to an earlier point that we discussed, making sure you have the right people at the booth. I know it's not always in the control of the marketer who gets to go, but I would make a very strong case for sending the right people. And there's a reason why I recommend SDRs, full cycle SMB, AEs, and founders, because they are the ones that are going to be the best at following up. That would be number one, making sure that you're optimizing for your staff. Number two, if like when all else fails, if you don't have budget to get the right tech, if you just don't trust the sales team to do it, then take that off of their plate and have somebody on your team inputting everything same day. Don't wait till you get back. Don't wait for the weekend. Every night, go back to the hotel room, export your leads, and get it all done and cleaned up so that people don't have to think about it and have an excuse for not doing it because they were busy. Like if this is your job, if your employment, your personal livelihood relies upon good event results, then find a way to make that happen, even if it means throwing an extra resource there for the week and literally having somebody sitting in the hotel room transcribing things.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I've always said, I think some like little bit of a guerrilla tactic of like just getting it done. Find any way to get it done, because then I think when you have that data, now you can start to tell a story. Because sometimes, whether your cat with Gainsight, like she had to do work to figure out that they,
Mm-hmm.
average sale goes up by 20%. Like at
Yeah.
some point in time, you have to fight for your own cause. You have to find a way to figure it out. You have to track your leads on your own, do it by hand, anything you need to do. Or if you're the one that wants to, work with Immobly and add a software, be the one to learn it, be the one to own it, be the one to essentially take it to task, use it, and then start showing people the information that comes out of it and how it personally affects them, and then all the possibilities. Because sometimes people are a show me, right? They
Yep.
want you to show them. They're not going to take the initiative or follow the steps. You got to show them progress first.
Totally. Especially in this current economic environment.
Yeah,
ZERP
man.
is dead. Zero interest rate policy where money was cheap and free. That's
Yeah.
dead.
So if someone's listening to this, right, they've kind of either they're on here or they're going to listen to it once we record as a podcast, and they feel like they've kind of missed the boat, right? Too long with follow up. It's killer for them. Their company's doing it and they want to make a change. They're like, man, like been listening to Matt and Zach on this, and like, it would be night and day if we could have a little bit more speed to lead, right?
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
Talk to me. Talk to
Give
you.
you to
I'm
give you a call.
approachable. Yeah. I'm not a high pressure guy. Like if you just want to riff and have questions, let's chat and go through your specific situation. If you're looking for a new job for a company that treats events with a higher degree of care, whatever, hit me up. I'm happy to help out in any way, shape, or form.
Do you do any kind of like analysis for people? Like if a person comes to you and is like, hey, we're really struggling with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you've done? Because I know from doing the show, we've done that a lot with people where they want to have discussions about maybe their engagement, discussions about their shows, their portfolio, their tier portfolios. Have you had discussions like that when it comes to maybe those processes that they have?
Yeah, we do that all the time. We definitely believe in being consultative and making sure that people have the ability to tell the right story internally. So we take that upon ourselves to help them frame that.
That's great. Zach, thanks for being here today, man. I appreciate you hopping on with us. I think it's a great topic. It's interesting how it folds into sales and marketing and just kind of like the entire spectrum that events is touching all these different departments.
Yeah.
So I thought you dropped some really good information. Appreciate you talking to everybody today.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for joining, everybody. It's great to meet you either over video or over the chat.
Yeah. Thanks for everybody for showing up. Thanks for joining us today. As always, have a good rest of your week. We'll talk to you soon.